Here's a video I really don't want to do. I believe that the water pump is failing, and as you can see, this has all been detailed out really nice. Did this a few years ago. Everything is in and painted and good, and I really don't want to tear this all apart again, but unfortunately I think the water pump is failing. So it's going to have to come out and a new one is going to have to go in. All right, so I've got the fan shroud off, the fan off, the pulley off, took the alternator off and just set it to the side so I wasn't dumping coolant into the alternator. Gonna take the power steering bracket off and then keep going here. I have not drained the coolant out of the radiator because that petcock down there looks really crusty and I don't want it to break. So see how much coolant comes out just by taking the hoses off. Word of advice, label all your bolts so that you can see where they go back. I'm doing that here. As they come out, I'm putting them on cardboard kind of in the order that they came out and labeling them, and then just keeping everything boxed up so I can put it back on when I'm done. The old water pump is off. After a few blows with a hammer and a block of wood, it came loose, only to find out that I missed a bolt. So even after double checking, I looked a couple times and I could have swore I had them all out, but when the pump twisted one way and didn't come off, it told me something was still holding it. So it was the bottom bolt down there underneath the inlet. Somehow I missed it, but the pump's off. Now I'm gonna take the new pump and paint it up to match the Ford blue of the old one. Next step is to clean up the surfaces. This doesn't look terrible in here. In fact, most of the original gasket came off with the water pump. So I have to clean up the surfaces, get kind of some of that crud that's down there off, clean all of that up, and then would be ready for the new gasket. I'm going to use Permatex Ultra Black on both sides of the gasket when I put that gasket on. So I'm also chasing the threads. I've done it on the bolts already, and I'm just doing it on the threaded holes as well, just to make sure that this crap that's in there I get out, because some of them are pretty nasty. I'm just trying to clean it all up. I did clean this all off as best as I could with a razor blade and a Scotch-Brite pad. It's pretty good. There is some pitting that's on this guy where the gasket material won't come out. I'm hoping that the silicone and new gasket fill those spaces in and make a nice seal. Okay, I'm just getting ready to put on the Permatex Ultra Black. But what I'm going to do is I'm wiping down all the surfaces where that's going to go. And this is just a shop towel with some brake cleaner on it to make sure that these surfaces are all clean. I'm going to put a little bit of Permatex on my gasket. If you read online, people say, don't put sealer on, do put sealer on. I'm going to do a super, super thin coat, almost like I'm not putting any on. And if you remember, I had that spot over here where there was some pitting. I might put just a skosh more over there to try and make sure that that seals up nice. But next step will be the gasket and the sealer, and then a water pump. Here is the painted water pump. So I taped off all the places I didn't want to have paint go, on the pulley and the heater core, inlet and outlet, radiator hose. So that is the finished product. Another reason to put a little bit of silicone RTV on it is this gasket itself has got some imperfections in it. There's little dents and bumps and little frayed pieces of material. So hopefully that sealer fills all that in. The new water pump is in. I torqued everything down to 15 pounds. And as I mentioned earlier, it's good to label the bolts and where they came out of. I did my best, but in the end I still somehow couldn't figure out where one of them went. I think I had them mislabeled. There's a bolt right behind the power steering, or right there, that I forgot, and then I thought I needed another bolt behind the alternator bracket in that hole, but it turns out I don't need a bolt there. The original water pump, or the previous water pump, did not have a bolt there. Water pump I pulled out has a boss, but no bolt. And the new one has a hole, so I started putting a bolt in there and couldn't figure out even why I would be putting a bolt in there. Later to find out that's not where it went. There was this guy right here that I forgot to put in. So the extra bolt that I had, I tried to put in here, ended up going here. So anyway, it's in. They're torqued down to 15 pounds each, and I think I'm just going to let it dry now before I go any further. Brackets are back on, the hoses are back on, at least onto the water pump. I'm going to put the alternator back in. It's always a good idea to put some anti-seize on the alternator bolt, because this bolt and then the aluminum casing of the alternator can become worn, just like happened to me before. So I'm going to throw some anti-seize on the bolt, on this part, not on the threads, and put that back in, and then continuing to let the silicone RTV water pump up. Is in, everything's tightened down, power steering is back on, the alternator is back on, the fan is back in, fan shroud is on. So everything in theory is back together. It's taken a little while, but I have gotten the coolant to the right level. I'd take it out, I'd run it, get it good and warm, let it cool off, check the temperature, add more coolant. I've had to do that a few times. I've had to keep checking the hoses to try and track down a couple of leaks. After a while, though, I think I got the leaks taken care of. I got the coolant level where it's supposed to be. It seems to be maintaining a good, constant, cool temperature. I've done a couple of little drives up and down the road. I've had the engine warmed up really good, and I think that the water pump project is complete.